If you're planning on buying any cards from TCG Player, make sure you use our affiliate link right here in the description of our video to help support the channel. It's the best way to do it and it's free. Looking for PTGO codes? Poton Store has all the latest sets and promos instantly delivered to your email. You can use Tablemon code when checking out for 5% off. Card Market is Europe's largest online marketplace for Pokemon cards. Whether you're looking for sealed product or singles, vintage or the latest sets, just follow the link in the description to find what you need. This video is sponsored by the Pokemon TCG deck building website PokemonCard.io. Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video here. Today we're going to be taking a look at a tier list that I've made based on tournament results, my own testing, my own perception of how things have been going since Lost Origin arrived. Now, if you've been watching my videos, if you've been keeping up, you know that I wasn't particularly impressed by Giratina and the Lost Zone engine in the beginning, but as I got more playtime with it, and I personally got better with it, right, in terms of my decision making, I definitely see how I initially underestimated it, and it's clearly one of the best engines out there, and probably one of the best decks in the format, right? As you can see, for tier 1, I have Palkia V-Star listed. It's doing really well. There's way less Flying Pikachu out there because it's way less viable at the moment. Plenty of decks have answers to it. And Palkia V-Star is still as strong as ever. It's versatile. It has the Intillin engine to help support it. It hits like a truck. And it has Radiant Greninja. It has cross-switcher access. It just has access to basically its whole deck through the Intillin engine and Irida. That I think Palkia V-Star is and will remain a tier 1 deck for the foreseeable future. Now next up we have Mew VMAX, which seems to have gotten stronger since the World Championships, since Lost Origin happened. It is a deck that can deal a lot of damage. To deal with V-Stars, there aren't many VMAXs being played around. That means the damage threshold that it needs to reach is actually lower. And it also has a really good Psychic Leap attack in order to deal with single price decks such as the Lost Box decks that we'll talk about in a moment. And Mew, of course, can protect itself from getting KO'd and can start trading effectively against those sort of decks. Now, of course, there's the issue of Drapion V in said decks, and it can trade very effectively 3 for 2. But if you can eliminate the Drapion V with a Lost City in play, then that makes it so it's really, really good, and you eliminate that threat. And I don't think decks will be playing 2 Drapion Vs to really counteract Mew VMAX. So that's something that really benefits Mew at that point. So next up we have Giratina V-Star, a really powerful Pokemon with a Lost Zone engine. It can really dish out damage very quickly. It can pressure with Cramorant. It can do a lot of damage with Giratina V-Star, and then it can close out games with its V-Star attack, knocking out anything that's inactive, and also using Sableye to get those last damage counters going. So Giratina V-Star, a very, very powerful deck. I do expect it to continue to be played heavily and to remain one of the top decks as well for the foreseeable future. Next up, we have Lost Box decks based on Mirage Gate. That's why I put the Mirage Gate for the image. There are a ton of variations. You could be playing the Amazing Rare Reshiram. You could be playing the box decks, which feature Drapion and Raikou or Zeraora, and Snorlax and Radiant Greninja as an attacker, which we've seen do well already at tournaments, Japanese Yokohama tournament with over 3,000 players, and also in a Singapore regional tournament that did feature this card. So really, really exciting to see all the possible combinations that you can do with Mirage Gate. And also this means you can counteract basically every deck in the format. Now we also have other Lost Box variants, such as the Sableye Charizard heavy list that did really well in Japan and has been taking online tournaments by storm, featuring 3 Echoing Horns to just utilize Sableye as much as possible and get some really nice KOs that way, whilst having Radiant Charizard for the late game and as a backup attacker to the Sableye to dish out even more damage. So Radiant Charizard still relevant in the format, not quite in the version that we saw dominate Worlds and this past weekend of regionals with the Inteleon, but still a very powerful and very relevant card. So that to me is tier 1, pretty much summed up. I guess the weakest deck of tier 1, if I had to rank them, I would put Mew VMAX at the bottom, then the Mirage Gate, Lost Box decks, then I would put Giratina, then I would put the Sableye Charizard deck, and then at the very top I would put Palkia, because a Palkia that just runs smoothly will always be a very big threat, and it can also tech things like Crabominable or Empoleon V to be able to adapt to different situations and decks. Now, below that, we have in tier 2 the really powerful decks, but that aren't quite as powerful as the tier 1, but they do feature some really good matchups against some of them. Hisuian Zoroark feels like a deck that has a lot of potential, but simply can't compete with Palkia. It feels like a less versatile Palkia. It can hit slightly higher damage than Palkia V-Star. It doesn't rely on your opponent's bench to do the heavy damage, but because you do need your own bench and you do need to have self-damage as well, that makes you very vulnerable to both Mew and Palkia, and therefore you're always trading, so whoever goes first will always have an advantage, but there could be situations where you end up whiffing your KO and they don't. So that is one of the problems that the deck has. Also, the energy cost can get a little bit awkward with only 4 double turbos available. If you whiff that, you could be in trouble. Or if you lose the Melony engine, you lose a little bit of the explosiveness of the deck. And it's also a very destructive deck. The V-Star ability is great. It's essentially a research for an ability, but that just doesn't really help out if you end up discarding crucial pieces. Of course, you can play Oranguru with the Primate Wisdom ability to help you in protecting yourself from that, but it's not going to be an easy time to manage all your resources. Yeah, it can really get out of hand. So that's what puts Hisuian Zoroark just a tier, a little bit below tier 1. It also doesn't have great single price attackers that it can feature, which means it can struggle against the Mirage Gate or just single price based decks. Now, next up, we have Kirin VMAX, a real powerful VMAX, the only VMAX that you could argue could get close to tier 1 at some point because it does feature 1-KO potential. It pairs very nicely with Palkia, much better than Ice Rider because it can deal unlimited damage, as opposed to Ice Rider, which is more energy efficient but limited also in the damage that it deals. And the engine with Oranguru just makes the deck feel a little more streamlined than with Inteleon. You get less options, of course, of choosing which cards you want, but the extra energy acceleration from both Palkia V-Star's ability and Kirin VMAX's ability means you rarely whiff the numbers that you need to hit, and that makes Kirin VMAX a very powerful Pokemon. Next up, we have Geraldine VMAX, another VMAX featured here in tier 2. It's a really, really decent deck, and the healing can definitely put it over the top against some of the decks that are being played, especially as single price decks. However, Geraldine VMAX does fall pretty easily to Giratina VMAX decks. They either attack for no energy or they attack with all basic energy, and the V-Star can just immediately eliminate one Geraldine VMAX no matter what. So having such a bad Giratina matchup is definitely very sad. Next up, we have Arcanine, one of my personal favorites, and it has become more sturdy with the addition of Radiant Gardevoir. Unfortunately, though, the damage threshold is way higher here, and Inteleon Engine is a lot riskier to play because of Sableye placing 12 damage counters and Echoing Horn being used more freely in those decks. So that means Inteleon will definitely struggle. Sobbles can become very big liabilities, and therefore your Arceus isn't able to really stand up to the metagame in general. The damage threshold, like I said, is also much higher with threats of Giratina V-Star and Hisuian Zoroark and Kirin VMAX in the field, which means Arceus V-Star is getting one-shot way more often than before. Now, next up, we have Regigigas, a deck that I hold close to my heart because of because of World, and it's in the same spot as it was in World. It has some really good matchups against tier 1 decks. It also has some really awful matchups against tier 2 decks, and it can just lose to itself simply because of dead draw situations, awkward draws, or same issue as Hisuian Zoroark. If you end up destructively discarding 3 ordinary routes at some point, or the research ends up costing you quite a few Regis that you had duplicates of, things like that, that ends up setting the deck back quite a bit. The high use of Echoing Horn is also not ideal in the general field for this deck, because it can mess up if you whiff to bench a Regi, or if they get a KO mid-turn and then they play the Echoing Horn to bring back another Regi. It can get really awkward really quickly, and so the management of scoop up nets is very important. The Thornton gimmicks are definitely something I would not consider playing, but Gift Energy is certainly a very cool thing to have now in Regi decks. Next up, we have Arceus with Giratina. I very much prefer this version than Arceus Inteleon now. Bibarel seems like a solid backup to prevent dead draws against opponents, and powering up Giratina quickly and efficiently is also very nice. It's less versatile than the Lost Box decks. It has one plan in mind, and it can have a difficult time against efficient Lost Box decks that do apply a lot of pressure since the very beginning, because you're already trading for a single price. In your case, they're trading for 2. So if they get the first attack off, which is usually what happens, then you'll be a little bit behind and relying on them whiffing. So that can be problematic. And then next up we have Urshifu, a deck that always has potential, always has sneaky plays with Medichem's Yoga Loop attack to get extra turns. But unfortunately, Manaphy is now at an all-time high being played. So you do need to do some fancy canceling Cologne plays in order to get past that. And also relying on the Inteleon engine is far from ideal. As I mentioned, for Arceus Inteleon, you need to be very careful with your bench management, and Echoing Horn can really players can just simply avoid attacking their Urshifu, and then you're in a lot of trouble then, because your engine falls apart and you're stuck with a Pokemon that hits for 30 damage for a single energy after it has discarded its energies for the other attack, which might not even be hitting 2 Pokemon because of Manaphy. So now I'm thinking about it, maybe I ranked Urshifu at tier 2 high and it should be in tier 3. And then we get into tier 3 with things like Hisuian Arcanine, which is a fun deck, but can falter a bit, and does have glaring weaknesses in setting up, and if at any point you don't get to do the maximum damage, that immediately sets you back a turn. Can play some tricky things like Mightyena or Slowbro, but overall it's definitely worse than the Lost Box decks that can attack since the very first turn. Next up we have Goodra, a deck that a lot of people love. Goodra is a really cool Pokemon, but its damage output is not there. It's not comparable to Giratina, and there's a lot of things that can 1-KO Goodra anyway, such as Kyurem, such as Giratina with its V-Star attack. And so a single tanky Goodra is just not ideal. It's generally not that great. It can be successful, it can get tanky enough to where it succeeds, but it isn't that great. Next up, we have Turbo Darkrai decks. These always are a threat because they can really get going, but it's the stark difference between this and Giratina is very clear. You need, I believe, 7 energies, right? No, 8 energies. Wait, no. You need 8 energies to do 200 in play to do 270 damage. Giratina needs 3 to do 280. So that's very, very questionable. I have seen Darkrai V-Star try to get paired with the Lost Zone engine to activate Mirage Gates and get a bunch of energy in play, but Mirage Gate only gets different types of energy, so then you start playing other types to maximize the Mirage Gate, and then the deck gets convoluted and it's just not worth it. So Darkrai V-Star, I think, will stay as a nice, it's like a nice, what's the word? A nice tribute to older Darkrai decks, and we got Dark Fetch back, but realistically, I don't think it can ever get to tier 1 or even tier 2 status because of how energy intensive it is. Next up we have Hisuian, not Hisuian, sorry, Origin form, the Dialga V-Star, which now with the plethora of single price decks and the fact that Charizard V-Star is being heavily played, it's just not a very powerful deck. It can be good and trade efficiently against V or rule box based decks, but against single price decks, which are more common now, then it's not a great deck to be playing. Eternatus VMAX has made a slight comeback, at least in online tournaments. It is seeing decent play. It can get to some really nice numbers, and there is less path to a peak being played now than ever in the format, I do believe. But still, the glaring fighting weakness and the linearity, I guess, of the deck just really makes it fall apart. And Blissey, same thing. As such, something like Goodra, or Arceus Intellion, the damage output right now in the format is insane. So even a sturdy 300 HP Blissey is going to fall apart to the constant damage, especially because once a Blissey goes down, your backup Blissey will be doing 60 or 40 or maybe 100 damage, which is nothing to write home about. Yeah, so that's the issue with Blissey. Having that, you never have that really big backup Blissey to continue applying the pressure that the current active Blissey has been doing. And then we have Lunatone Zoroark, which I only didn't put it in tier trash because it's one of the most consistent single price decks, but it's way too linear, it's way too easy to play around, it's way too easy to predict, and it's just a worse choice than every other deck listed before it. And then we have tier trash with things like Clefairy, Crobat VMAX, Durant, Frostmoth boxes, Magikarp decks, or Ditto based decks, I guess. Rapid Strike, Malamar, and Samurott V-Star, and honestly, many other decks. You could fit every other VMAX in tier trash. Just don't play those decks. Yeah, simple as that. Don't play them in competitive tournaments. Play them to have fun, absolutely. Play them on the ladder. If you're looking to get some championship points, get a top cut at the 1Ks happening all over the world, do not play decks in tier trash. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you like this style of videos, which I can try to do more often. And we are now in the lead up to the first Lost Origin legal regional in Peoria in the United States this upcoming weekend. So we'll see how accurate this ends up being. Thank you so much. Don't forget to support the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.